911. Hi. My wife of 13 and a half years disappeared last night. The car and her are gone. Something is really wrong here.
Debbie Bailey was 32 years old, married.
2 little sons. She's home playing Monopoly and watching movies with her boys, because that's the most important thing, and look what happens. Back in February 1997, Debbie Bailey left her house around 11 on a Saturday night. Her husband, Barry, said he woke up and discovered her missing.
We really suspect foul play. Real worried. There's something really bad going on.
The next morning, she was found shot in the head 4 times on the side of the road.
The big question is, what was she doing there?
Doesn't make a lot of sense. Immediately following her death, Barry Bailey told the police that a drug deal gone bad could have been the cause of her murder. After Deborah was killed, I don't understand why her husband had the need to say ugly, ugly things about her to everyone he ran into, including the kids.
Forensically, this is a challenging case because while some evidence and fingerprints were tested, the results were inconclusive.
Even though this case is 17 years old, we have a lot of witnesses.
There is a lot of really good clues.
A bunch of little bitty things, and if we can put them all together in a nice logical story, then maybe we can convince the DA here to move forward. The Yakima County Sheriff's Department always considered Barry Bailey to be a potential suspect.
Look, apples.
Wow, that's so freaking cool.
Be careful for worms and stuff.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
I'm Kelly.
Kelly Dave Johnson.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Judd
Oh,
Talbot.
nice to meet you.
Glad to have you here.
Well, we're happy to be here. We hope y'all aren't regretting this yet.
We want cuffs on by Friday.
Well, maybe we can work that.
Okay.
Well,
we have a war room.
Let's go see it.
All right.
Let's go see it.
I received the case in January of '99. I met Debbie's parents and felt compelled to work for them.
Nubbin Chambliss. Hey, Steve. How you doing? How you doing?
Steve Spingola, sir. Steve, nice to meet you, sir.
Yolanda and I have Steve Spingola coming back this week, and for the first time, we're bringing back Nubbin Chambliss.
Dave?
Morning.
Debbie, how you doing? Judd, nice to meet you.
I've been in law enforcement for 33 years before I retired in '06. And a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to work with Kelly and Yolanda.
Baby, high five.
I said, man, that'd be my goal to get to do another case with them. And lo and behold, 2 years later, I got a call. Of course, I jumped at the opportunity.
This should be a great team.
You said y'all had how many detectives work on this case?
I think I'm the 6th or 7th guy that's been assigned to it. This case went through different investigators' hands. They were never able to really nail down enough evidence to charge anyone because this is strictly a circumstantial case, and those are very, very hard.
Well, y'all want to start with putting our first picture up of our victim?
Debbie was the mother of 2 boys, beautiful lady, 32 years old.
Miss Congeniality.
In the competition for Miss Washington. She was a wonderful mother, according to her parents, all of her friends and family.
Y'all want to tell us about the crime scene and what happened?
In the early morning of February the 16th of 1997, a small 2-door Volkswagen was pulled off on the edge of the road. The car was seen by witnesses a number of different times. Finally, a passerby stopped and actually saw a female in the car and called law enforcement.
Yeah, I just found a car, and there's a lady in it. She's not conscious at all, but there's blood all over the place. Yeah, there's blood.
Deborah Bailey was slumped forward. In her vehicle, she'd been shot.
The murder weapon was a .22 caliber semi-automatic handgun. Up to this day, we have no idea where the murder weapon is.
The time frame of her death was sometime between 11 o'clock in the evening on the 15th and the time of her discovery early on the 16th.
According to Barry Bailey and their 2 sons, the whole family watched movies that night. Barry fell asleep on the couch around 10 o'clock, and later on, Debbie put the kids to bed.
Barry says he wakes up around 12:30, 1 o'clock, and she's gone.
Okay, let's start with all of the things that we think are incriminating against Barry.
The husband. He started calling a friend by the name of Cindy Hill, who worked at 911, reporting that his wife was missing.
He never calls the real 911. He keeps calling her.
Right.
Oh, I woke up, I'm on the couch, and she's out with her friends or something. Oh, shit. I tried calling her cell phone, turned off or something.
He tries to create an alibi.
So he's not just alibying himself, he's making sure it's recorded.
That's right.
This call, which was made from Barry's home phone, corroborates his alibi, which begins at 1:23 in the morning. What's curious about this call is that Barry seems a whole lot less concerned about his missing wife than he does about making sure his statement is recorded.
It's a matter of record. Doesn't he say that at one point? It's a matter of record.
He does. He does.
What about all the statements he's making after she has passed away that everybody else is saying is incorrect about her life?
Right.
To go back in there and sewn up away. It's like hundreds and hundreds of bucks every month.
After Debbie's murder, Barry talked to everybody from law enforcement to the local media, trying to tell everyone that she was the biggest drug addict in Yakima County and spending all of their money on drugs. Story evolves into she's the biggest doper in Yakima County.
Correct.
But the thing about it is all of her friends say she might have been a recreational drug user, but she was a wonderful employee and a loving mother, unlike the way Barry was describing her. What about the telephone?
A phone call came in at 11:19 to Barry's cell phone.
Last 43 seconds.
While Barry says he's asleep, his phone answers a call the sheriffs believe was made by a man named Timmy McKimmey. Timmy McKimmey is the unknown in this case. Law enforcement has always suspected Barry Bailey in his wife's murder, but now we have a phone call that connects Timmy McKimmey to Barry at the same time, which makes us ask ourselves if Timmy can be connected to the murder of Debbie also.
They're friends.
But he doesn't really know Deborah too well, just through Barry, right?
Just through Barry.
Timmy gave 2 statements, did the polygraph, failed miserably, and then lawyered up.
Question number 1, do you know for sure who shot Debbie? He said no. He failed that pretty bad. Did you plan with anyone to kill Debbie? And he said no. Those are the high spikes.
Polygraphs are not always reliable and they are not admissible in the courtroom, but the results of Timmy McKimmey's polygraph sure make you wonder if he knows more or if he's involved. So what we would like to try to do this week is be able to answer definitively if Barry Bailey did it alone and he's the shooter and all by himself, or if he's the hirer and possibly Timmy McKimmey is the shooter and or the getaway driver.
That's right.
If Barry and Timmy are involved, we want to build a case that shows their motive, but we're also going to need a timeline that clearly shows that involvement. We are also going to have to disprove Barry's claims that drugs played a role in all of this. He's always talking, he's always calling, he's even complaining and criticizing y'all. Did he ever quit talking to y'all?
Yes, he did stop talking after statement number 7, I think, 6 or 7.
Talking to Barry is going to be crucial in this case because nobody has talked to him in 15 years. With the evidence that we find this week, we can take another run at Barry and hope to get the justice that Debbie and her family have been looking for 17 years.
Morning, folks.
Morning.
Kelly, Yolanda, these are the Smothermans.
Hi.
Debbie's parents and her brother Scott have been involved in this investigation for all these years. They were close to her in her life all the way up until the time of her murder.
Debbie was full of energy from the day she was born, and she never slowed down. She was a daddy's girl.
She always helped me do whatever I wanted, bale hay, whatever. She was just always there for me no matter what. I mean, she's one of those people that always looked out for the little guy.
She had a lot of love.
Who wants to claim credit for her beautiful looks?
And she was also Miss Washington?
She got Miss Congeniality in the contest.
Okay.
What kind of mom was she?
Oh, her boys were her life, and she watched over them like a little mother hen.
After Debbie died, Barry kept custody of their 2 boys. What kind of contact do y'all have with the boys?
You know, we've tried, but they don't have much to do with us.
How about with Barry?
None.
Barry called Carl and Pearl and Scott that morning when Debbie went missing, so they went to the house and they were still there when law enforcement kind of unexpectedly showed up.
They said that they had found her and that she had been murdered. And Barry says, I bet it had something to do with drugs.
I'm not saying that she, didn't smoke marijuana or didn't take some drugs. I don't know for sure. But she would never go to the extreme to where she wouldn't be able to take care of her boys. She would never do that.
So what we're going to do now is start talking to all these people on the list, one by one.
Been a lot of people praying for something like this. You don't realize how many.
Tell them to keep praying.
Thanks, man.
This tells a true story for you on what happened in there.
You're watching Cold Justice.
We're investigating the murder of Debbie Bailey, a mother of two, and a former Miss Washington contestant. She was last seen alive around 11 p.m. on February the 15th, 1997. An eyewitness who was driving home that night saw Debbie's car on a mountain road around 11:20.
In your recollection, it wouldn't take you any longer than 20 minutes to drive
it would not.
to that point on the hill.
No. Because it was so dark, our eyewitness couldn't see whether Debbie was alone in the car that night, so we needed to try and figure out what was going on in the world of our suspects at around that same time.
Thank you so much.
Barry Bailey was always considered a suspect in this case. Timmy McKimmey did not come into the picture until the Sheriff's Department collected cell phone records from Barry Bailey's phone, which showed an incoming call that night at 11:19, and that call traced back to a friend of Timmy McKimmey's, whose name is Gary Van Horn.
Tim McKimmey came over about 9 o'clock.
Was he invited?
No, he just showed up.
Nice.
Do you remember anything about phone calls?
Yeah, he went in the kitchen and talked.
And you heard that conversation?
No. I have no idea what he was talking about.
Okay.
He gave me $25 to use my truck.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Timmy later on said that he phoned Barry about a job, but he denied using that truck. Later on, he says he did use the truck for a beer run. He never could explain why he needed to borrow a truck to do something he could have done with his own car.
You say you do remember McKimmey leaving?
Yes. Either 11 or 11:30.
I thought it was odd. But
Yeah. Well,
why did you think it was odd?
for somebody to go using somebody's truck at night like that, I thought it was very strange.
I kind of fell asleep a little bit. Tim woke me up like 12:30 to 1:45 to give me my keys for my truck.
When Barry was questioned about the phone call from Tim McKimmey, he denied it until he was confronted with Timmy's statement. Then he changed his story and said, oh, they had talked about fixing a car. Both men seemed to want to hide that phone call and what they were doing during that time period, so we need to figure this out. What if we put a timeline on the board where both Barry and McKimmey are unaccounted for?
See where we can get it.
Yeah, let's start doing that.
A strong timeline can establish that our suspects had the opportunity to commit the crime. We need to piece together who was where and at what time, and then look for gaps and inconsistencies.
Okay, so the time we want to start with the night before is what? What time does Timmy go to Gary Van Horn's?
9 o'clock.
Okay, next.
10:15, Barry falls asleep.
What's Debbie doing around this time?
Watching movies with the kids.
Debbie is putting him in bed at 11.
At 11:19 p.m., Timmy makes a phone call from the Van Horn's house to Barry's cell phone. At 11:20 p.m., Debbie's car is spotted on the road, which means Debbie and possibly Barry traveled to the crime scene while Timmy was still at the Van Horn house. Timmy leaves there at 11:30 p.m. and doesn't return back till 1 o'clock a.m.
Okay, next.
Barry calls Cindy.
1:23. Investigators were unable to find anyone to corroborate either Barry's alibi from 11 p.m. to 1:23 a.m. or Timmy's from 11:30 p.m. to 1 o'clock a.m. when he returned to the Van Horns.
All right, you have Timmy on Barry with a gap at the same time.
About an hour and a half.
Hour and a half.
It's interesting that Barry and Timmy share this time frame. It's right after they talk on the phone and around the time that Debbie's car appears. It makes you wonder if Barry and Timmy could have been together.
All right, so let's do the math. If Timmy leaves the house to drive to the scene, how long is that going to take him? And be conservative, err in his favor.
He could do it in 30.
Okay, so we got 30 minutes to get there.
For Timmy to drive to the murder scene, pick up Barry, drop him off at home, then make his way back to the Van Horns could have all been completed within a 90-minute time frame, even for a scenario where Timmy is the shooter. He could have showed up alongside the road, shot Debbie, with Barry being the lookout, and then picked Barry up and drove off.
They're both unaccountable during that time.
At the crime scene, this little alcove cut out on a mountainside. They have her car that's been an impound all these years.
Early on in the investigation, we refused to give the car that Deborah was killed in back to her husband, Barry Bailey. It was important to us because it was the crime scene. Putting the car back could be used to help explain what the original detectives had seen that day.
Get to see the area and how remote it is.
Yes. At nighttime, this would be very dark out here.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. I can't see her coming out here at 11 o'clock at night by herself.
No.
Perfect place to do a murder.
We're at the crime scene where the Yakima County Sheriff's Office found Debbie Bailey shot in 1997.
Hi.
Hello.
Well, hey, boy, talk about an isolated spot.
Not only do we have the actual vehicle that Debbie was found in, but Jeff Gillespie, the original lead investigator on the case, is showing us firsthand what they initially discovered.
So her car is consistent with coming from her house. Show us what y'all found with the car.
Yes.
Well, when I got here, which was about noon, there was a female slumped in the driver's side seat, and she had obvious head trauma. She was obviously deceased and had been for a while. I could tell there were 322 shell casings right outside the driver's side door.
The location of the casings, where they are near the front driver's wheel. That makes the first scenario we imagined, one where a person just walks up to Debbie and shoots her 3 times in the head, very possible. There could be another scenario because there's also evidence that somebody had been sitting in Debbie's passenger seat that night.
I thought there was something in the back seat.
Her purse. Her purse was in the back seat.
Zipped up.
99% of the women put their purse on the front seat if nobody's sitting there.
That's true.
Yep.
If my purse is in the back seat of a car, somebody's in the way in the passenger side. Otherwise, I would have it right there beside me. I don't ever put my purse away from me. No girl does. That tells us that whoever was with her that night could have ridden with her. So why were the shots fired from outside the car?
You can see the amount of mud that's still on that rocker panel. It was like the width of maybe a heel on a boot or a shoe.
Yeah, you're trying to get out and your foot just skims on it like that.
But it was obviously fresh.
Right, right. In this scenario for Debbie's shooting, the passenger who came with Debbie could have been the one who killed her.
So you get in the car.
The passenger who was with Debbie that night actually got out of the car. Their right foot, the heel, scraped against some of the mud. And then he walked behind the car. Debbie stayed in the car, told her to roll her window down.
She rolls the window down. So I'm rolling it down, pretend like it's down. Okay, so I thought she looked around at her shooter.
No, she's looking straight ahead.
Then why is he going around and coming back toward the front of her?
If he went around back, he'd have plenty of time to get the gun out without her
Of course,
seeing
so
it.
she couldn't see it, but we know that it is coming in this angle.
Okay. Okay, so now stick your arm out the way you're holding the gun. Is that the right distance?
Easily.
Yeah, easily. 6 to 30 inches.
Bang. Bang. Bang.
3 times. Then comes around. Bang.
Bang.
4th shot into the backside of the head.
The passenger who might have ridden with Debbie would have still needed a separate driver to get away from the scene. So either our driver or the passenger in Debbie's car could have fired the shots that killed her. The question is, why would they do it and take nothing from the car?
Nothing. Nothing from her purse, nothing from her. Jeff Gillespie actually brought Barry to the crime scene 8 days after the murder. At that time, Barry had not been given certain specific details of the murder, such as how many times Debbie had been shot.
I said, well, Barry, why don't you go ahead and tell me what you think happened here? And he said, well, she met up with her drug dealer, rode out to this area, and then she owed him, he said, I think like $75 or $100. He said that her drug dealer needed to get out and take a piss, and that gave him the excuse to get out of the car. They walked up to the car, bang, bang, bang. Then he paused for a while, then went one bang again. She was dead.
Without any details of what happened that night, Barry was able to reconstruct down to pretty good detail exactly what happened, just like all these investigators have always thought it happened. If this really was a case of drug dealers and a drug deal gone bad, then why is her purse still sitting in the back seat unopened? It just doesn't make any sense. We need to find out whether or not Barry's claim that Debbie was doing a lot more than just recreational drugs is true. Let's talk to our witnesses and see how far we can get. All right? All right.
Investigators never found a connection between drug dealers and Debbie's murder, but they did find people like Terry Morton, a friend of Debbie's and Barry's.
Did he ever tell you who he thought would have done something this terrible? I mean, did she have somebody?
I think he said that he felt it was a drug dealer type thing, you know.
Did you ever know who her source was?
Well, the last person I knew it was Tim McKimmey, you know.
Timmy was giving her the dope.
Everybody was getting it from him.
Terry's claims that Timmy could have been a drug dealer is a big deal, but it doesn't really tell us that Debbie was putting herself in debt over drugs.
She was an occasional user. It wasn't running her life.
How much was she typically paying for that at that point?
Barry would give me weed, and then he'd give me a little bit of cash in trade for that.
You're telling me that he's the one that was doing the purchasing.
Right.
If Barry really was putting up the cash or dealing drugs himself in exchange for cocaine, then why would he try to make her into this horrible drug user and he had nothing to do with all of it?
4 couples of us went out on a limo ride. And basically, I was there She supplied the dope.
He ain't gonna hold back about it, is he?
No.
So he was buying it for her?
And him.
And himself?
And him.
According to our witnesses, Barry Bailey was doing drugs, trading drugs, and buying drugs. For a guy who pretends like his wife had such a horrible drug habit, it sure sounds like he was doing all that he could to facilitate it.
I mean, we all bitch about our old ladies, you know. This is the way he said I looked at him straight on. He goes, "But if you think about taking her on a fishing trip and tipping the boat over, and when she reaches for the oar, crack the bitch over the head. And then to find out that like a month later she got killed, I believe it was Barry. Straight up Barry. Yeah, 100%.
Excellent. Excellent. Based on this timeline, both Barry Bailey and Timmy McKimmey had the opportunity to murder Debbie. But we're going to have to better understand Barry and Debbie's relationship to figure out if there's a motive in the middle of it. Barry Bailey's previous wife said he was abusive to her, so we need to try and figure out whether or not that pattern of abuse continued.
What was the relationship between Barry and Debbie back in that time?
I know there was a few times he blew up at her. He pushed her one time.
So you got physical with her? Just a push?
Yeah, and I was like, holy crap.
She ever talk about it was so bad in the marriage that she was going to divorce Barry?
I know that she did say, because he was married once before, that, you know, if he would never lose everything to a wife again.
He wouldn't lose anything to a wife again.
Like property, you know. That's what I used to hear him say.
Hear him say.
According to all the records, Barry and his first wife split their finances 50-50, but he was complaining that he deserved more.
Thank you very much.
If Barry and Debbie really were fighting and a divorce was imminent, could that be the reason why all of this happened and that's his motive?
Star, we thank you so much for coming in.
Star was a friend of Debbie's. They met through Debbie's job, an interior design company.
One day she came down really upset. Well, she called me and said she'd like to talk with me because at that time I had a nonprofit called CARES, and I helped women get divorces and protection orders and things.
Wow.
And I said, well, what's going on? And she told me that her husband, he was very abusive to her, physically and emotionally, mostly emotionally, that he was very controlling, and it wasn't too long after that she was dead.
We know she never filed any paperwork, but the question is whether Debbie ever mentioned the threat of divorce to Barry.
She just didn't want it to get back to Barry that she was talking to people.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
when the abuser who controls you knows that, that's the most dangerous time.
This is the number for Julie Cabrick.
Yeah.
Julie Cabrick was probably Debbie's closest friend. She was also her employer. She talked to Debbie almost daily. And there had to have been a time as her best girlfriend that she knew a lot of what was going on in the marriage of Debbie and Barry.
He had hit her and hurt her. So she kind of a horrible thing, but she waited until he'd gone to sleep and she tied the sheets down to the bed so he couldn't get away. And she smacked him several times with a frying pan and told him that if he ever hit her again, that she was going to beat him a lot harder than that. She was becoming more independent, and he didn't like it.
Okay.
Shortly before she was killed, she had come to me. She had mentioned that she was looking at getting a divorce, and because of all the illegal things that Barry had done, no matter what, if they got a divorce, she would get divorced. My thought is that he just decided, all right, I'm not going to lose my house, I'm not going to lose this stuff, I'm not going to lose the boy, so I'm going to kill you. So he just shot her. That's what I think happened. I think that she took a heck of a lot of damning evidence to her grave.
Okay.
Throughout the years before and after Debbie's death, Barry was convicted of stolen property crimes, arson, theft, abuse, but Debbie also was aware of his continuingly ongoing criminal activities with drugs and stolen cars and things like that. If she had been threatening to tell the world about that, maybe that's our motive. Look how much she just adds to the case all by herself.
Yeah.
We now have a motive for Barry. We already had the opportunity for him and Timmy to commit this crime. Now we need to figure out if there's a means for them to have done it. We know Debbie was shot with a .22 caliber pistol. After the murder, Barry did turn over all of his weapons to the authorities, but none of those weapons matched. We need to try and figure out if there was some other gun that either Barry or Timmy had access to. Starting with the one that all of the investigator notes say Debbie owned herself.
Barry and me and Debbie were all sitting at the kitchen table, and she come out and got her gun that Barry had bought her It was small. It was like about like this, and I know that that gun has never been around since. And I know that gun exists. I touched that gun.
If anyone knows where this gun went, it might be Al Farnsworth. Al worked closely with Barry in the years following Debbie's murder on construction jobs, and in 2001 he called the authorities because of some suspicious statements that Barry made to him.
Back here putting a hotel sign up. We're down there digging the dirt out, putting rebar in, and he said that the murder weapon is in many small pieces and scattered throughout some river. He also said that I wish I hadn't done it.
And what was he referring to when he said he wished he hadn't done it?
The murder.
The murder? Is that your interpretation or what he said?
No, that's my interpretation.
Okay.
What else could it be? He was actually going to tell me about it, and I shut him up.
Al Farnsworth made a statement back then about this gun that Barry told him he threw in the water. It wasn't enough at the time, along with everything else, to make the prosecutors want to move forward. But when you take that statement along with the other witnesses who will say that Debbie had a gun that's now missing, you get a clearer picture of the idea that our murder weapon might be that weapon of Debbie's that's never going to be found.
Do you regret not letting him talk?
I think about that. But then I'm up for getting shot in the back of the head. Same as his wife.
Yeah.
All throughout the week, we've been following every lead we can to try and find Timmy McKimmey.
You still see Tim?
No.
I don't know. I just understand he lives out of town.
You think he's still in the Yakima area, or is he out of state?
I don't really know.
He's the real play here. He's the real potential. He would be the witness a prosecution would want to cut a deal with as long as he's not the shooter. We called all of his old jobs. We talked to his ex. Somebody said he's couch surfing now, which is a new term I've never heard.
We searched and searched, and we weren't able to find Timmy.
Maybe we'll get lucky.
He's pretty much gone off the grid. He's not getting a government check that we can find. What happened?
She's been there since August.
So he's not at this house?
No.
He might have gotten word that we're looking into the case, or maybe he's just dropped out of sight. We just don't know. We meet with the DA tomorrow, so we're headed back to town to work on the probable cause. In the meantime, Steve and Judd are headed to Idaho to try and talk to Barry. We might not have been able to find Timmy and talk to him, but Barry doesn't know that. So hopefully we can use what information we do have to our advantage.
Good golly. How far is it out here? I don't know, man. I'm telling you. We're out of gas before we get there. We're driving about 3.5 hours by car to actually go locate Barry. He's living in Idaho on a, I must say, a ranch. It almost looks like a mini junkyard when you get there.
This is going to be the house.
This is the house?
That might be the house. Right here.
I got somebody in the shop.
That's probably him.
We knocked, and when he opened that door, I thought he was about to have a heart attack. He couldn't believe that law enforcement was standing on his property.
This is regarding the Deborah Bailey homicide.
Right. Honestly, I really I mean, I think about Debbie almost every hour of every day. I tell you, whoever or what, it could even be a group, who knows, but I'm pretty convinced it was some Mexicans or some kind of, she owed money, a lot of money, and...
Who was she buying it from?
I was never in that circle and didn't want to be.
Well,
I hate drugs. I've always hated drugs. But these, just like the beheadings you see on TV now, and the Mexican cartel down in Mexico, all the beheadings and the horrible, horrible violence. The world is a shitstorm, man. And it's...
yeah, this is
the
true.
value of human life is lessened every day. The value of the marriage, the sanctity of marriage, all of that.
You know the gun that you bought for Debbie, that 22? You were at a party. Debbie brought the gun out.
Never in front of me.
She said you bought it for her. She was all proud about it.
Debbie hated guns. That's a real mystery. But is it possible that I did get that to give it or sell it to Debbie and she sold it to somebody but didn't, and she kept it all those years? Because Debbie did tell me some lies and did hide a lot of stuff from me, so that's all I can say.
Did you and Debbie ever talk about divorce?
I guess she was working on some sort of divorce, which shocks me. I heard that way after the fact. Didn't know a thing about that.
Convince me, tell me why you wouldn't have killed Debbie.
I couldn't do something like that. I couldn't harm her.
You ever remember telling Al Farnsworth You were sorry you did it?
No, I don't. Al said that?
Al said that you said that.
I might have said there's times that I'm not sorry she's gone. There was things about Debbie, you know, let's face it, everyone's got, you know, there's things about her that, I'm like, I guess I don't miss that, you know.
You also said the gun that was used was cut up and in the river, thrown in water. Did you ever make that statement?
No.
Would you be willing to take a polygraph or not?
No. That's crazy talk. That's weird.
How would Al know that unless you told him?
I don't remember. I don't tell him. Debbie didn't tell him like that. Why would I tell him something like that?
Think about Tim. What do you think Tim's telling us?
I don't know.
Take a good guess.
I don't know. Oh my God.
Tim's the weak link in the chain here, Barry.
This is crazy.
Stop. Barry, if they gave you a one-time deal on this.
Oh.
Do you understand that? A
Yeah.
one-time deal.
Yeah,
One-time
no.
deal.
It's just like a nightmare.
It is, for Debbie.
I just want to live my life.
Well, things change, Barry. A shitstorm is coming your way. One-time deal, Barry. We get the DA, we do this.
Oh, no, I know what you're proposing. No, sir, I can't do that.
Can't do that.
No, I can't confess or something I have nothing to, I did
Stop.
not do.
It's over with.
I want to end this conversation because...
Okay. I'm going to end the tape now. Time is 7 minutes to 11.
Okay, guys, Yolanda, we have trekked through all of Washington and all the way into Idaho. Y'all found Barry. We cannot find McKimmey. Every other witness has been talked to.
Can we charge both of them with murder?
As long as we can show that McKimmey was involved before the murder happened, then he can be charged.
Okay.
Since the evidence is consistent with the idea that two people committed this murder, and because we know that Timmy McKimmey called Barry in the minutes before this happened, it makes you wonder if Timmy McKimmey was aware of what was about to happen. You're not just presenting a case that's Barry's lies. You're presenting what Barry says as opposed to what all these true, credible people say really happened that night and in all the months that followed. You got a really good case. When they get here, you'll let us know.
Okay.
With a few hours left before our meeting with the Yakima County prosecutors, we step out to let our investigators have time to prepare.
Hello? Got a call from Jim Haggerty just a few minutes ago. Got a call from Jim Haggerty just a few minutes ago. They've already made their decision. They're not going to file.
Ever?
No, we don't have a case.
Wow. Without even meeting with us, the prosecutors, based on simply reading the probable cause, have made the decision that they are never going to take this case.
I said, I still want you to come down. Let us at least present our case to you.
Well, thank you for doing that. I'm trying not to cry, and I see how emotional Judd is about it, and we're all just, what do you do? And then you get mad, and then you want to do something. If they're going to come anyway, then you have nothing to lose.
No.
Don't take no sitting down. The prosecutor's office has agreed to come over, and we're having this closed-door meeting. It's 4 prosecutors and Dave and Judd and me, and we're laying out point by point by point every single piece of evidence we have to try and convince them to move forward. Starting with the fact that we very clearly have a suspect who's motivated by an impending divorce.
She was very, very worried. She didn't want it to get back to Barry that she was talking to people.
Both suspects had unsupported alibis during the time that we believe this murder occurred. And Timmy changed his story many times about that truck that he borrowed that night.
For somebody to go using somebody's truck at night like that, it was very strange.
Barry claimed a drug dealer killed his wife. But witnesses say it was Barry who was buying Debbie's drugs that were supplied by Timmy McKimmey.
Timmy was giving her the dope.
Everybody was getting it from him.
Our victim was potentially shot with her own gun, a gun that Barry admitted to witnesses he had destroyed.
Said that the murder weapon is scattered throughout some river.
Barry spent his entire life doing nothing but bad-mouthing his wife and making her out to be nothing but a piece of trash. And you can feel the mood in the room change. I'll look over at Judd and I'll say, it's okay. And he goes, yeah, it's okay. All right, guys.
They're going to take the case.
Oh, my God. Are you serious? Yep. Oh, my God. The meeting ended with them agreeing to divide up the case file to read so that they can move forward.
We convinced them to turn it around.
Now you're going to get what you've been wanting to get for a long, long time. Now we're just hoping they will file charges against Barry and Timmy McKimmey.
Good book. Proud of you. They didn't take the case, and then finally we go back in and they took the case. It was a hard day for all of us, especially the investigators that were so close to the case.
Carl and Pearl and Scott are going to be more excited than anybody.
You ready to go tell them?
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's go tell them. Hello.
Hi.
To be able to go to the Smothermans and say, we got some good news, is amazing.
So the good news is that your prosecutors, because of Judd and Dave and the chief, are planning to move forward on this case.
Okay, good.
And everywhere we went, all of the people that were friends with Debbie told him how glad they were that the case never got let go. Couldn't have turned out any better.
I just know you never quit.
This is because of you and your wife, for Scott, that we didn't stop.
All these years just hoping and praying, and here it is, you know. Because after a while you get to thinking, well, you know, it's been so many years, nothing's going to happen, and it's just been an answered prayer. There's not a day goes by that I haven't asked God why, you know. And bless your heart. I guess God said, okay, this is the time, and I'm thankful for that.
Well, give us a hug, bye, and ask him.